So like solving a pin and scaling it down and finding the proper positioning for a pin immediately generates the question for me, okay, so this is right. Now where does this fit? Because this is different than the concept that I previously had. So now I need to understand where this fits in. However, the thing is, it's not like a mental map in that it's like necessarily visual or conscious even necessarily. It's like, I don't know, it's more like a sense or like a vibe. I guess it's kind of like a sensation or like a feeling or something like that. It's like there's, I think more so now. I don't know if I had this since when I was younger, but it's like I understand the pinning process. I don't know if I necessarily go about it as effectively as other people, but it's like I highly value it because I want accurate pins. Because like I have this sense that, I mean, I suppose I could, I think I could be persuaded not to word it this way if I found a better wording for it. But since it's still crude in my mind, I'm still using this particular wording. I have a sense that everything is talking about the same thing, but I see no use in keeping it in that ambiguous form. I want things to get pinned. I want to know the specific, like with typology, for example. There's some holistic truths to be recognized from all these personalities and all these, different facets of human existence interacting with one another. There's something to be learned, and I don't see the usefulness in just saying, oh, we're all just different people on different paths, and that's cool, and things like that. Like, there's always more to be learned from learning the nitty-gritty particular details of things. And when people advocate ambiguity, I actually get upset, even though I don't always. It's not like I have this strong drive to make things not ambiguous, like, but I value it. It's like, even though I don't necessarily have all the energy I would want to have to solve things, the need for solvency is there.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because those things I don't conceive of, I guess, necessarily correct answers. I conceive of a correct system or a correct pattern, but at the same time, that's different. There's a word I'm looking for. It's the difference between ambiguity and what I'm thinking of, which is not necessarily malleable. It's less concrete, I guess, but it's there is some sort of not necessarily value judgment, but there's always differentiation, albeit perhaps softer differentiation than some might want.
I I kind of see it from.
I don't think of categories that, like, and then one of the things and people do this with typology is they think of it very much as boxes, and they think of them as containment units and a taxonomy that sorts things into, which in a way it is, but I find it better and more in line with my way of thinking to think of them as clusters, and it's a clustering taxonomy, and so I do a lot more clustering than I do sorting.
I prefer to think of it like as a visual image. I think of it as shading, and
Yeah,
that. Do you have a disagreement?
No, I was just saying that I like that concept.
Because it's like the ambiguity thing I was talking about. Like, it's not necessarily that other people are advocating ambiguity. Maybe it's not that harsh, but when they're not as concerned with it, it's like, I'd frame it as like, at the end of my life, I don't want to have, a painting on my easel that's just 2 shades of blue. That's just a giant canvas with 2 shades of blue on it. It's like the thing I was talking about. It's like, having it turn into this unifying thing. It's not like one statement.
Right.
That would be pinning that one statement. It's more having a million different statements that are saying something, but it's not one statement that they're saying. They're saying a million statements, but there's something to be gathered from the million statements that cannot be verbalized. It's like, I've related it before, like, it was one of the reasons why I liked the idea of Lovecraftian horror, like the like the elder gods or things like this. These things that are so big that sometimes they defy description. It's like this notion that it's like when you're really taking in the grandiosity of something. It's like understanding that there's millions of smaller parts or smaller facets that contribute to this thing that you're like. It's like basically grasping something that otherwise you wouldn't be able to comprehend. And in a certain way, I understand that this is going to sound terribly artsy-fartsy, but it's like desperately hoping that if you just look the right way, you'll catch a glimpse of God.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I get the idea of collecting truths such that, more than the individual things are, like I said, it's building that larger pattern that actually reveals stuff. But in general, that's how I think of it. Like it's almost like it's not really a sieve. But that's how I store everything but it's not, I don't identify with storing it as statements. And I think of things very geometrically and my mental concept, I think, but.
Yeah. For me, there's definitely a need for parts to be moving. Because it's again, the more abstract shit I'm talking here. It's like, I don't know if these sort of metaphors will be lost on you, but it's like a need for the pieces to be moving, because it's like that thing I was talking about. Like if you were to look at a certain perspective, look from a certain perspective, be able to catch a glimpse of God or something like that. It's like staring up into the night sky, looking at all the stars, and then for a brief second getting the sense that you could have sworn that the horizon just blinked like an eyeball. I'm not saying that I've actually seen that, but I'm relating it metaphorically.
Interesting way to describe, yeah.
It's like a peeking through the veil sort of thing.
Yeah. I would almost I'm trying to come up with, because I think I get your thing, but I would say that I think of things a little differently. It's almost like building a pattern that can contain the universe and eventually will, like, the only way to go beyond it would be more or less kind of like ends up pushing past it. Like eventually you're hitting the edges, and so you're actually conceiving of this kind of, this is probably a bad analogy, but it's a growing thing. And things, but it doesn't move, it grows. And things go in it. Things can move through it. Like a new thing basically just gets thrown in it and moves through it, and in the way that it moves through it, that determines how it becomes part of it or does not become part of it or whatever. But it could be shaped. It could be shaped by the thing that moves through it. But yeah, new information on things that you didn't know that were there, or concepts. It's useful for looking at things that it hasn't looked at before because of the connectedness of it all. By connecting the things you learn from separate things, you can understand things that were never directly addressed before, or something like that.
See, now I'm thinking of like any SI is like wanting to, and again, I'm sticking with the sort of religious symbology because that's currently what my brain is latching on to as interesting.
Right.
I kind of see any SI as like very much wanting to build a likeness of a deity from the ground up and wanting to make sure that it is an accurate representation. Like you were talking about things, I think you had mentioned things building off of one another. And then SENI more like, well, let's just hide here and maybe not hide so much, but like let's observe and gonna try to think of a way to word this. Like observe all the things that we see and like the effects. This is gonna sound like shit because I struggle with the wording of this stuff, but it's like to make it more brass tacks. I feel like any SI is more like, okay, let's make it visible, whereas SENI and like more in the NI focus of it is, okay, let's try to get attuned to seeing the invisible.
Right. Well, it sounds like, you're trying to find it. You think it's out there, and you're like, I got to go see it. Like if I get things lined up right, I'll be able to see it.
Yes.
And I feel like, from at least my version would be, it's almost like seeing it doesn't imply understanding of it. Therefore, it would be equivalent to build the thing.
Yeah.
And when the thing is built, it is a representation of the thing that you seek. Or if that's kind of going crazy. But it's like, I almost...
I mean, they're both.
My concept of the creator is, or of God, is very much as a mind and a creator, and I actually related a lot to like writing and different, like that actually was the way things finally made sense to me, is when I started thinking about it that way. And so it's more to me like the more understanding of everything, then the closer you are to the thing that understands everything, if that kind of makes sense.
In both of our descriptions, I couldn't help but feeling just a glee at the obvious madness of both pursuits. Like, it's just so... You're not going to get what you're looking for. Not in entirety, and not in the way that you think. But it's like...
But the direction that's important.
Right. It's like... It's like that thrill that you get from feeling like you're one step closer to this ineffable thing.
Yeah. Well, another contrast this just occurred to me. You're talking about, like I said, you want to see God. You want to find him and like be able to see it. And I want to figure out what he sees.
Huh.
If that makes sense. I would relate more to that.
I like that.
Yeah. I
And
spend
I